She was eating red velvet cake, fork in her right hand, phone in her left, smiling at someone who wasn't me. I was 6 feet away. She hadn't noticed. I hadn't planned this. I wasn't following her. I wasn't playing detective. I was there because my lunch meeting was canceled and I didn't feel like sitting in the office kitchen while Mark microwaved fish again. I picked a random cafe 2 blocks from her building. That's all. That's the entire reason I was there. Stupid, pointless coincidence. Until it wasn't. Until she walked in, laughing, with him. She ordered the same thing she always does, almond milk latte, no foam, and a slice of red velvet. She used to bring half of it home for me. Said it was too sweet for one person. Apparently not today. The man she was with? He touched her knee under the table. I saw it. She didn't move, didn't flinch. She leaned in closer. He was wearing a watch I recognized, not because I'd seen him before, but because she had sent me a photo of it a month ago. Thinking of getting this for my boss, she said. Do you think it's too much? Too much? He kissed her hand before she picked up her fork. She didn't pull away, didn't look around, didn't hesitate. That fork? We bought it together from that overpriced shop near the lake house. I thought it was ridiculous, $40 for a set of 2. These are dining moments, she said, not utensils. I remember laughing. I remember paying. I remember being so in love that even her nonsense sounded like poetry. And now she was using that fork to eat cake with a man who had no idea I was 6 feet away, quietly drowning in plain sight. I sat frozen. Every muscle in my body went tight, but not a single one moved. I watched her laugh at something he whispered. I watched her brush crumbs from her chest like she had no responsibilities in the world. Like I didn't exist. She was supposed to be at a team meeting. I knew her schedule. I helped her write it out on the fridge with those little magnetic markers. I packed her lunch this morning. A turkey wrap, cucumbers, and a stupid note. Kill it at the meeting, superstar. She was here killing something all right. My dignity. My sanity. My future. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even breathe. I pulled out the receipt from my pocket for the lunch I hadn't touched, flipped it over, and wrote. I was here. I saw. Don't come back. No threats. No begging. No anger. Just the truth. I waited until she got up to use the restroom, then dropped the note into her purse, right on top of the little planner I bought her for her birthday. She said she liked how it made her feel organized. I should have known better when she kept missing dinner. Then I left. I didn't take a photo. I didn't collect evidence. I didn't do anything smart or strategic. I just walked. I walked until I didn't recognize the street names anymore. I walked until my legs hurt and my vision blurred. I walked until the thought of going home felt ridiculous. And then I booked a motel. That was 2 nights ago. She's been calling, texting, emails, even. But she doesn't know I saw. Not yet. But she's going to find that note. And when she does, the life she thinks she still has will vanish like cake crumbs on a napkin. And this? This was just the beginning. I didn't expect her to find the note so soon. I figured it might take a few hours, maybe the next day. I imagined her reaching into her purse for a lipstick, a receipt, or that overpriced essential oil roller she swears helps with migraines. But it happened that same afternoon. Just a few hours after I left the cafe and disappeared into whatever version of exile I was inventing for myself. I was still walking, still aimless, when the text started coming. The first one was simple. Where are you? Then, barely a minute later. We need to talk. Please. I don't understand. By the 5th message, she stopped asking and started spinning. I know how this must look, but it's not what you think. Can you just let me explain? You weren't supposed to be there. That last one stuck. You weren't supposed to be there. That one said everything. She wasn't apologizing. She wasn't denying. She wasn't heartbroken. She was caught off guard. She had been living in a world where I wasn't supposed to see the parts of her she kept hidden behind dinner conversations and warm smiles. And now, the curtain had dropped, and there she was, center stage, exposed. I didn't respond. Instead, I checked into a small motor lodge by the train tracks, the kind that still uses keys instead of cards and smells faintly of mildew and faded lives. I paid for 3 nights in cash, even though I had no plan past that. The man at the desk didn't ask any questions. I think he saw the look on my face and knew I wasn't the type of guest who wanted small talk. That night, I didn't sleep. Not really. I laid on the stiff mattress, still wearing the same button-down I'd worn to work, and stared at the cracked ceiling. My mind kept replaying the way her fingers moved the fork to her mouth, how her eyes lit up at the gift he gave her. It wasn't just an affair. It was affection. Real, genuine affection. That's what gutted me. She had more warmth in her face for a stranger than I'd seen from her in months. For the past year, I thought she was just tired. I thought she was stressed from work, from her mother's surgeries, from life. I adjusted. I gave her space. I cooked more often, cleaned without asking, rubbed her back when she sat in silence. I thought that was what love looked like, patience, quiet sacrifice. But now I understood something no one wants to admit. Sometimes people stop loving you, and they won't tell you. They'll just keep collecting pieces of your kindness while giving their heart to someone else behind a frosted cafe window. The next morning, my phone rang 5 times in a row. I didn't answer. She left voicemails. Her voice cracked on the third one. Whether from panic or guilt, I couldn't tell. She said she needed to see me. Said she made a mistake. Said it was complicated. Said she didn't mean to hurt me. But here's the thing. People only say that when they already have. At noon, I turned off my phone completely. I stopped checking my email. I sat outside the motel on a rusted metal chair and watched the train roll by, wondering if I should have just gotten on one. Left town. Left everything. But I wasn't ready. I wasn't even angry. Not yet. I was numb, like a limb that had been asleep for too long. By evening, I got a message on my work account. She couldn't reach me through my phone, so she'd started fishing for alternate ways. The message was short. No apology. No remorse. Just one sentence. You don't get to ghost me after 10 years of marriage. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't a confession. This wasn't regret. This was someone whose illusion had collapsed, and now she was trying to glue it back together using the only thing she had left, control. She still thought I'd come home. She still thought I'd listen. She didn't realize I was already gone. That night, I wrote something in a journal I hadn't touched in years. I didn't even know I'd packed it. It was wedged between a pair of socks and a phone charger. The cover was bent. The pages smelled like dust. But I opened it, grabbed the motel pen, and wrote the first real words I'd written to myself in over a decade. I wasn't supposed to be there, but I was. And now I'm not the fool she thought I was. It felt small, but it felt like something. I don't know what's going to happen next. I don't know where I'll sleep in 3 days. But I do know one thing. I'm not going back. And neither is she. I didn't tell anyone where I was. No friends, no coworkers. I figured the less people knew, the less chance I'd cave under pressure and go back to pretending everything was fine. But it turns out, 10 years of marriage teaches your spouse more about your patterns than you think. On the second morning of my motel stay, the woman at the front desk knocked on my door and said someone had come by asking if a man named Darren had checked in. She looked half concerned, half amused. It's a woman, she added. Pretty, angry type. She's been circling the lot in a silver Honda. Wants to talk. I didn't open the door. I just stood silently on the other side of it until she went away. I watched from the blinds as Dina paced outside near her car, clutching her phone like it held some kind of spell that could summon me back into her world. She stayed there for almost an hour. At one point, she sat on the hood of her car and cried. I'd never seen her cry like that. Not even when her dad died. It should have broken something in me. Maybe it did, but not the way she expected. When she finally gave up and drove off, I felt nothing. Not victory. Not sadness. Just silence. That night, I did something I probably shouldn't have, but I needed to know the full truth. I used an old backup phone and logged into our shared cloud account. Dina had no clue I ever synced her gallery to our home system 2 years ago when she lost her phone on a ski trip. She'd thanked me for being so techie back then. Now I thanked past me for forgetting to disconnect it. What I saw wasn't just cheating. It was a second life. There were photos from hotels I'd never heard her mention, some in the same city, some 2 states away. Captions written for him. Outfits she'd never worn around me. Videos of dinners where she toasted with wine I can't even pronounce. I scrolled for hours. She looked happier in those moments than she had in anything we'd done together over the past year. But the part that destroyed me? There was a photo taken exactly 7 days before the cafe incident. A table for 2, dim lighting, rose petals. She was holding a menu and smiling at the camera. But what made me drop the phone wasn't the background or the man sitting across from her. It was the shirt she was wearing. My shirt. One of mine. An old university crew neck I gave her when we first moved in together. She used to sleep in it when she missed me while I was working night shifts. She once said it felt like wearing a memory. And there she was, wearing that memory for someone else. That's when it hit me. She wasn't just cheating. She was replacing. The next morning, I didn't hide. I went to the grocery store across town and used my actual credit card. I figured if she was still watching for signs of life, I might as well give her one, but on my terms. And it worked. That evening, I got a message from her sister, Mallory. She's a mess. She thinks she ruined everything. I don't know what she did, but she keeps saying she went too far. Can you at least let her explain? I stared at the message, not knowing how to respond. Mallory had always been neutral, someone who liked me, but not enough to take sides. If even she was involved now, Dina must have been unraveling fast. Still, I didn't reply. Instead, I made a decision I never thought I'd have the stomach for. I emailed her boss. Polite, professional, careful. I told him there had been a personal emergency and Dina wouldn't be returning to work for at least a week. I didn't say why. I just said she needed time. And then I booked a table. At that same cafe. Same time. Same seat. But this time, I wasn't the one watching. I was setting a trap. Because she was going to return. Sooner or later. And when she did, I'd be ready. Not with rage. Not with tears. But with something she hadn't expected at all. Closure. My way. It took 3 more days. 3 full days of silence before she finally showed up again. Same cafe. Same coat. Same coffee order. But this time, no red velvet cake. No laughter. No lover. She looked like a person pretending to be someone she used to be. Her hair was Messier, makeup lighter, and the scarf she wore belonged to the version of her that still had dinner with me on Tuesdays and left the bathroom light on when I fell asleep on the couch. I watched from across the street. I didn't go inside right away. I wanted to see how she moved without the performance. No camera smiles. No hand on her thigh. Just her. She sat at the exact table where I left the note. Not just the same table. The same seat. As if she was trying to reverse time by retracing every step, hoping that sitting there might rewrite the story. But nothing changed. The past didn't erase itself. She stared at her coffee cup for a long while, then pulled out her phone. I assumed she'd text someone, maybe me, maybe him, but she didn't. Instead, she scrolled. Slowly. Then stopped. Her lips tightened. She looked like someone reading something awful and pretending it didn't hurt. I crossed the street and walked inside. I didn't hesitate. I didn't flinch. I just walked straight up to her table and sat down. She didn't look up for a full 5 seconds. When she did, her face crumbled. I've never seen a person's entire sense of control slip away in real time like that. She opened her mouth like she was going to speak, but no words came out. She just blinked, swallowed, and finally whispered, "You're here." I nodded. That's it. She reached for my hand, reflexively, and I pulled it away before she could touch me. Her fingers hung in the air for a second, then curled into a fist and dropped to her lap. "You're not answering anything," she said. I didn't know what else to do. I've been losing my mind. "You already lost it," I replied. "You just didn't notice." She flinched. That line hit her somewhere deep. Good. It was supposed to. "I made a mistake," she said, voice cracking. "It was just—" "No," I cut her off. "Stop calling it that. A mistake is locking your keys in the car. What you did was a choice. Over and over again. With a man who isn't your husband. In restaurants. In hotel rooms. In my sweatshirt." Her face went pale. "You looked at everything," she whispered. "Did you go through mine?" "Yes," I said plainly. "I saw the photos. I saw the captions. I saw what he gave you. I saw what you gave him." Tears welled up, but I wasn't moved. I'd seen her cry before at weddings, movies, when she spilled wine on our rug. This wasn't remorse. This was a woman watching her safety net catch fire and realizing she never learned to fall. She reached for her bag and pulled out a folded paper, the napkin. My napkin. She unfolded it like it was made of glass. "I don't know what I thought I'd find when I opened this," she said, "but it felt like my heart stopped when I read it." "You thought it would never catch up to you," I said. "That's what stopped. I didn't plan any of this. It started as someone who listened, who asked about my day. I know that sounds awful, but you stopped doing that. We stopped doing that." I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask her how many times I brought her lunch at work. How often I stayed up late proofreading her proposals. How many weekends I spent making sure her parents' house was repainted. I wanted to ask her how she could rewrite the narrative so she didn't have to face what she'd done. But I didn't. Because none of that mattered now. I stood up. She reached for me again. "Please, just sit. Just let me explain everything." I leaned down, close enough that she could hear me over the hum of the espresso machine, and whispered, "You're explaining it to the wrong person. He's the one who believed your lies. I don't anymore. Then I walked out. Again. But this time, she wasn't just left behind. She was alone. I could feel the silence stretching behind me like a rope she couldn't grab onto anymore. I didn't go back to the motel. I didn't go to work. I drove to a place I hadn't seen since college, an empty beach 3 hours north where no one asks questions and the only noise is the ocean smashing itself to pieces. That night, under the stars, I felt something I hadn't felt since the moment I walked out of that cafe the first time. Freedom. For 48 hours, there was nothing. No texts. No calls. No voicemails choking with regret or guilt or manipulation. Just silence. At first, I thought maybe I'd finally broken through whatever false confidence she had been clinging to. That maybe the cafe confrontation had hit her hard enough to make her stop. But the thing about people who are used to getting away with things is they don't stop. They just adapt. On the third day, I came back from the shoreline to find a woman waiting at the edge of the parking lot of the beach motel I checked into. She wasn't dressed like someone casual or apologetic. She was dressed for war, blazer, boots, and that clip-tight expression that she always wore when she was about to argue about something she'd already made up her mind about. I just need 10 minutes, she said the second I stepped onto the lot. Then I'll leave. I didn't respond. I didn't nod. I just walked past her toward my room. She followed. You think cutting me off makes you the bigger person? That walking away without letting me speak means you win. She snapped behind me. You left a note like a coward. And now you just vanish. I turned slowly, trying to hold the shaking in my jaw still. No, I said. I left a note like someone who's been lied to for over a year. Someone who watched his wife flirt with another man while still carrying his name. I didn't vanish. I escaped. She laughed. A bitter, joyless sound. You think that's what this was? An escape? From what? Your boring life. From dinners where you barely looked at me? You weren't present for so long, Darren. You were just there. I couldn't believe it. Somehow, she was trying to put the blame on my shoulders. She was reframing her betrayal as some kind of self-defense, like I had abandoned her long before she abandoned me. I wanted to walk back inside. I wanted to slam the door and never open it again. But then she said something that froze me mid-step. I told him I ended it, she said, her voice suddenly quieter. I told him I chose you. I turned. Chose me? I repeated. You're not picking between vacation rentals. You don't get to choose me now. Not after I was your backup option for a year. She stepped closer. I made a mistake. No. You made a routine. Her voice cracked. I ended it. I swear. I didn't know what I was doing, but when you left that note, when I saw that you'd actually seen me like that, I realized. I didn't want that to be the last thing between us. It's the only honest thing that's ever been between us, I said. She started crying, and for a moment, a sick part of me felt guilty, like I was being cruel. Like I should show mercy. But mercy is for people who don't burn bridges and then ask for a ride. I went inside and shut the door. She didn't knock again. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. Later that evening, I got a call from an unknown number. When I answered, the voice on the other end was not hers. It was her mother. I'm not calling to take sides, she said immediately. But she's not eating. She hasn't left her apartment in days. I'm worried. I know what she did was wrong, but Darren, she's still my daughter. I sat in silence for a while. She's not mine anymore, I finally said. Her mother didn't argue. She just sighed, long and tired. I thought you should know. He showed up. The man. At her place. 2 nights ago. She screamed at him to leave. The neighbors heard. That part surprised me. I hadn't expected her to do that. Maybe it was real. Maybe not. But the damage was already done. And just because she realized she couldn't have both worlds anymore doesn't mean she gets to rebuild one with me. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing her voice, that desperate edge, the insistence that I was still hers somehow, that I owed her a conversation, that I owed her closure. But I didn't. If anything, she owed me silence. The next morning, I opened my inbox and found a long email. Not from her. From him. The subject line was one word. Sorry. I stared at it for a long time before clicking. Inside was a message I didn't expect, an admission, a timeline, even an apology. Not just for being with her, but for believing her lies about me. He said she painted me as inattentive, distant, emotionally checked out. He said he thought I didn't care, that I wouldn't even notice, that I deserved to be left. And then he wrote this. She said you were never around. But from the way she talks about your dog, your favorite lunch order, your obsession with fixing old radios, I realized she knew everything about you. She was watching you even as she was betraying you. I didn't reply. What would I say? But the truth stuck with me. She never stopped observing. She just stopped participating. And now she wanted back in like none of it mattered. But it did. All of it. And as much as she wanted me to forgive and forget, I was starting to realize the only thing I needed to do was remember. Because the past wasn't done with her yet. And neither was the fallout. I used to think revenge was a loud thing, crashing, shouting, burning bridges with fire and rage. But now I understand. The most devastating form of revenge is nothing. Not violence. Not closure. Just complete, clinical indifference. You take the person who thought they had access to every inch of your soul, and you lock them out. No yelling. No warning. Just the sound of the door shutting behind you and never opening again. That's what I gave her. But she wasn't built to handle silence. 3 days after her mother called me, Dina made her next move. She went public. A post on social media. A carefully crafted photo of a sunset and some vague, sentimental caption. Sometimes we lose ourselves before we understand what we had. No names. No accusations. But the comments lit up fast. People from her job, old college friends, even mutual acquaintances began guessing. And that's when it started, the curated narrative. Suddenly, I was the one who left. I was the emotionally absent husband. I was the reason things crumbled. Her friends started sending me polite, awkward messages, asking if I was okay, saying they had no idea things were so rough, offering their sympathy. One even had the audacity to say, sometimes relationships just evolve in different directions. Evolve? Is that what we're calling it now, betrayal as evolution? I didn't respond to any of them. I didn't correct the story. But I did something else. I met with a lawyer. Her name was Leslie, and she didn't blink once when I laid out the facts. She took notes like a surgeon marking where to cut. The photos. The timeline. The emails. The journal entries. The synced gallery. She saw the entire machine of deception I'd been living inside of, and for the first time in weeks, someone treated it like it mattered. You've got everything you need to walk away clean, she said. And honestly, a little leverage if you wanted to go further. But I didn't want leverage. I wanted my life back. The next day, we filed the papers. I didn't send Dina a warning. No letter. No phone call. No dramatic confrontation on the steps of the courthouse. Just a quiet, formal envelope dropped into her apartment mailbox, stamped and certified. I imagined the moment she found it. The way her hand would freeze, how her eyes would widen. I imagined the panic setting in, the realization that I wasn't bluffing. That the story she'd told herself about how this would end, with forgiveness, with some last-ditch romantic scene, was dead. Later that night, she showed up again. Not at the motel. Not at work. At my brother's. Jonah was the only family member who still lived in the same city, and she'd gone to him, crying, shaking, trying to reach me through someone who understood me. He called me afterward. He's a quiet guy, not dramatic, but his voice had an edge when he said, "She's not well, Darren. She's unraveling." "She's not my responsibility," I said, even though I hated how cold it sounded. But it was true. Whatever happened to her after the truth caught up wasn't mine to carry. Still, Jonah hesitated. She said something strange. What? She said you left her something else. Something that wasn't the note. My heart actually stopped for a second. Like what? He paused. I don't know. She wouldn't say. But it shook her. I sat with that for a while. I hadn't left her anything but that napkin. But then I remembered. When I slid it into her bag, I accidentally bumped a folder. It fell slightly open, and I saw a stack of printed emails. Work-related, I assumed. But I never checked. Was there something else I'd unknowingly placed next to my note? Something she hadn't meant for anyone to see? The thought simmered. The next morning, I got an alert from my credit monitoring service. A large charge attempted on our joint card, one she wasn't supposed to have access to anymore. It was flagged and declined. But it wasn't the amount that bothered me. It was the store. A jewelry boutique. The same one we'd walked past every weekend on our way to brunch. The same one where she used to pause and look longingly at the window displays, saying nothing, just waiting for me to notice. She wasn't trying to buy something for herself. She was trying to replace me, rebuild the illusion. It hit me then she wasn't mourning the marriage. She was mourning the power, the control, the comfort of someone who forgave without question. And now, she was trying to reset the board, new ring, new promises, same lies. But this time, I wasn't on the board anymore. And she was about to learn what it feels like when the person who always said, yes, finally says nothing. It didn't make sense to me at first, the way she kept circling me like a shadow. After all the silence, after being exposed and cut off, she should have disappeared. But Dina was never the kind of person who allowed herself to lose, especially not when she'd spent so long building the illusion of control. The truth wasn't just painful for her, it was offensive. And now that I had chosen not to fight, not to explain or scream, she was unraveling in a way I hadn't seen before. The performance didn't work anymore. I wasn't clapping. But the thing I couldn't let go of was what my brothers said, that she thought I left her something else. Something worse than the note. I had replayed the moment I dropped that napkin into her bag dozens of times in my head. And the more I thought about it, the more I knew he was right. There had been something in her purse. A black folder, thick, tabbed. I hadn't even thought to look. And suddenly, I needed to know. I called Jonah, asked him to talk to her again. I don't know why she trusted him. Maybe because he didn't take sides. Maybe because he was quiet and calm and everything I wasn't in that moment. But she agreed to meet him again at a neutral place. A small park near her old apartment. I didn't go. I waited. That evening, Jonah showed up at the beach motel and handed me a USB drive. She didn't give this to me, he said. It fell out of her folder when she stormed off. I didn't ask what she'd said. I didn't want second-hand excuses. I just took the drive, closed the door, and sat at the edge of the bed with my laptop open in my lap, dreading what I might find and hating myself for needing to look. The drive had only one folder, drafts. Inside were dozens of documents. Letters. Some addressed to me. Some addressed to him. Some addressed to no one at all, rambling pages filled with emotional spirals, timelines, journal-like entries that didn't make sense. But one file stood out. It was dated 3 days before the cafe. Subject line, if he ever finds out. I clicked. It wasn't just a letter. It was a contingency plan. She had written out how she would gaslight me if I ever discovered the affair. She had strategies. Excuses. A section titled Emotional Anchors, where she listed things she could say to pull me back. You never saw me anymore. You were always tired. You forgot my birthday, but he remembered. She had a list of rehearsed tears. A reminder to wear my college hoodie if we ever met in person. I froze. It wasn't a love letter. It was a script. A full performance plan. Rehearsed, outlined, refined. This wasn't just betrayal. This was premeditated emotional warfare. A campaign of manipulation she had carefully written out and stored like ammunition. And the most grotesque part? There were variations. If I yelled, if I cried, if I walked away, each one with a different response flow. She'd prepared for every version of me, except the one who would read it all in silence. I didn't move for hours after reading that document. I just stared at the screen while my chest cracked open in slow, invisible pieces. It's one thing to be cheated on. It's another thing to know the apology was pre-written months before it was ever needed. At some point past midnight, I called Leslie, the lawyer. I left a message. We need to finalize the documents. All of it. Today. The next morning, she called me back before sunrise. You're sure? She asked gently. I don't want a cent from her, I said. I just want it done. I don't want her name on anything that belongs to me. Not my accounts. Not my future. What about the emails, the drive? She asked. That file. Keep it as backup, I said. But I'm not using it. She's already lost more than she realizes. She just doesn't know it yet. But Dina wasn't done. 2 days later, I got a knock at my motel room. I didn't open it at first. I waited. Then I heard the envelope slide under the door. Inside was a note, not a napkin this time. A page. Lined, handwritten in her usual cursive. It started with one sentence. There's one thing you still don't know. And below it, in smaller writing, a line that made my hands go cold. I lied about when it started. I read the note at least 10 times before I moved. Her handwriting was always neat. Even now, even for this, like some part of her still believed appearances mattered. That if the letters were elegant, maybe the pain wouldn't land as hard. But it did. I lied about when it started. 6 words. That's all it took to reopen a wound I thought had already been sealed shut. It meant everything she'd admitted so far, everything I had already processed and accepted, had still been filtered, curated. Even at her lowest, she'd tried to control the damage. But now, for some reason, she was finally admitting what I'd suspected all along. It hadn't been a slip. It had been a long, quiet removal of me from her world, one date, one lie, one plan at a time. While I was saving for our future, she was editing me out of her present. I sat on the edge of the bed, held that page in my hand, and realized it no longer hurt. Not really. It was like watching someone throw a punch from 100 feet away. You see the movement, but it never lands. Because I wasn't in that ring anymore. I walked outside with the note still in my hand. The beach was silent, waves slow and lazy, like the world was giving me space to finish something. I crouched beside a fire pit left behind by some campers the night before, dropped the page inside, and struck a match. It didn't take long to burn. Paper never does. What surprised me more was how quickly the last of my anger burned with it. It was like carrying a weight for months only to realize it wasn't tied to you anymore. You'd just been gripping it out of habit. I stayed by the fire until sunrise. No music, no distractions, just me, the sky, and a future I hadn't dared to imagine in years. When I returned to the city, I didn't go home. That wasn't home anymore. Instead, I rented a quiet apartment on the other side of town, near a bookstore I used to visit in college. I started small, new bed, secondhand furniture, groceries that only filled one bag instead of 3. But it was mine. Every cup, every towel, every lamp. Mine. I went back to work. I stopped checking her social media. I deleted the backup phone. I stopped waiting for the next letter, the next voicemail, the next dramatic gesture. And strangely, none came. I think she finally understood. I meant it. Weeks passed. Then months. No contact. No detour. Just forward motion. One Saturday, I took a walk through the park, same one where Jonah had spoken to her. And I passed a small outdoor bookstall. An older woman was selling vintage hardcovers, and beside her sat a yellow mutt with lopsided ears and a tail that wouldn't quit wagging. Rescue, she said. No name yet. Sweet as they come. I don't know what made me do it. Maybe it was the dog's eyes. Maybe it was the way it didn't flinch when I crouched beside it. Or maybe I just needed something in my life that had never lied to me. I adopted him the same day. I named him Ledger, because for once, I wanted something in my life that wasn't in debt to anyone. Now I wake up early. I read more. I cook strange meals. I laugh more easily than I used to. I take Ledger for long walks where I say nothing at all. And sometimes, when I pass a cafe window and see couples sharing coffee and smiles, I don't feel bitterness. I feel curiosity, because now I know what I want from love if it ever finds me again. Not performance. Not illusion. Not someone who needs to plan how to manipulate me just in case they're caught. I want someone who's already telling the truth, even when no one's watching. And the best part? I'm not in a rush to find her. I've already found myself.